All right, Krishna, everybody. Welcome to class 11 of the Bhagavad Gita. Good to be with all of you. We're picking up on the 15th verse, halfway through the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, about halfway through the whole Gita. And it's great to be with all of you. We'll start with a little kirtan, and then we'll take some reflections from the previous reading in class, and we'll get into the new material and also say hi to a couple of new students. So without further ado, pass the baton to Kelly.
Jai. Okay. And here comes, will you just keep an eye on people popping in? Thank you. Okay. All right, welcome, sweet souls. Happy Gi and Gita night. So just put any distractions aside, mute your phone, and let's drop in here together. So finding your comfortable seat, taking your seat, let your pelvis be heavy, lengthen up through your spine, lift through the crown of your head, back of your neck long. Soften the features of your face, perhaps close your eyes, soften your jaw. Drop your shoulders down your back, find a lift, a brightness between your collarbones. Soften your belly and find your breath. Connecting to your breath and perhaps taking a clearing breath. Inhale through your nose. As you exhale, open your mouth, let it all go. Acknowledging whatever's happening in your life outside of Gi and Gita, which is a lot. And not ignoring it, but just setting it aside for now. Saying, right now, Krishna, divinity, I aim to give my full attention to you. In my body, in the way that I take my seat, in my mind, and the way I use discernment to let some thoughts go and bring my attention back to you in your sacred holy name and in the words in Shastra, the Bhagavad Gita, and in your heart. Bring whatever is present in your emotional experience to our gathering tonight. Nothing to hide, but whatever is here, what if you offered it? Offer it all up. We start with our opening prayers and invocation, this honoring of all of our teachers, the acharyas who have walked this path before us, bestowing the light of knowledge upon us, removing the darkness of ignorance. Take a deep breath in, fill up. Nityananda, Sri Advaita
All right, Krishna. Thank you so much. Okay. So we're picking up on the 15th verse of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9. Does anyone remember any? Well, before we start that, yeah, we had a couple of new students, right? Tanya's new. Welcome. Do you want to just take a second, introduce yourself, say hello, maybe give us a little bit of your motivation for being here, what you hope to get from the class?
Sure. Hello. Hare Krishna. I have been, I was introduced to this group or this practice about 3 years ago. I've been in Kelly's Sage group for the last couple times. I'm going to India with her soon. Very excited about that. And many of you, I know. And my motivation for hopping in while this is already going was I want more. And I want to read more and, learn more and have more than just one association a week with like-minded folks. So here I am, happy to learn, happy to be here. And thank you so much for your service.
Happy to have you. Good idea. And did we have, I think, one more person who's new? Maybe? No, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome, Tanya. We have Steve here.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, I been bounced around a lot of different groups and used to go to a temple or a Krishna temple in East Hartford, Connecticut. And been getting back into it, but I've lacked a group. I went through a phase of kind of being intensely into it during lockdown. Of course, I was by myself, but so I'm really happy that to have discovered this group. Thank you.
So happy you're here. Do you see his shirt? Mahaprabhu on there?
Nice.
I'm like, he's found a group. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right. So let's take some reflections. To start us off, we had some really good reflections on WhatsApp. Anything that stood out from the last week? We went through the 8th chapter, the second half of the 8th chapter. We started from text 23 and then started chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge. Anything that stood out? Or I could just start listing things too if nothing comes to mind. The ball rolling. One thing was talking about how the yogi doesn't worry about the circumstances of where and when and how they leave their body, because they're always connected. They're always connected to Krishna, to the Supreme. And I gave the example of, this is Srila Prabhupada's example, of the mother cat holding the kitten by the scruff of the neck. They pick him up with their mouth. And so Srila Prabhupada said that death is like that. Death is like this, the mouth of the cat. But the death of somebody who is not connected, they're identifying with their body, is like the experience that a rat has when it's caught by that mouth. But the experience the kitten has is completely safe and protected. And that's the experience the devotee has in devotion when they leave their body. It's just a insignificant change of venue. Their fundamental relationship continues. Anything else? Let's get a couple of reflections, things that you heard.
I love the notion, and again, this has just been a theme in my heart and my head, that Krishna pervades everything, every molecule, and that the super soul is in every atom. And the super soul is what allows us to be, so that everything we can experience has its root in Krishna, but Krishna is not wrapped up on it, right? So he is beyond the material, but yet he is still there. So it's that idea of simultaneous oneness and difference. I love that concept.
Thank you. Yeah, very kind of heady and also beautiful thing that Krishna brings out in a few places in Bhagavad Gita. And in our readings last week, it came up in chapter 9, verses 4 and 5. Maya tatamidang sarvam jagat avyaktamurtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham te shavastitaha. I, in my unmanifest form, pervade everything. Everything is in me, but I'm not in them. And yet I'm not, he says in the next verse. And yet I'm not in everything. I maintain my independent existence. So simultaneously, I am all of matter. I am all of you. At the same time, I'm not. I'm providing the support and the foundation for that, but I maintain my own self Beautiful.
I have
One
a
more
reflection.
reflection.
On how we were talking about the qualifications of how to actually see Krishna. So like what we do to qualify ourselves so that we can actually have, not just that we can, it's possible to actually see Krishna in this life for each of us. And it had me reflecting on, and even some of the people in this group we've talked about this, of like, even just like calling in a partner, someone that you want to share your life with, even a romantic partner. Like in my own experience was how to qualify myself to be a match for a partner. And I was thinking about that and how to qualify myself to be a match for Krishna, right? Of how to then welcome him into my life like that. And not just say like lip service, I want Krishna in my life, but then act in a different way. And how we act in our life is actually what's qualifying us to be able to see him. And then also how you were talking about, I think it was in early on in chapter 9, but how the verse like Krishna's like the sun. But if you can see the sun, then you can see everything because it's light. So if you see Krishna, then you can see everything.
Right. Nice. Thank you. Beautiful. Any other reflections, things that we went over or shared or from your readings? Okay, so a couple of things I had here. Yeah, we read about how the devotee, at the end of the 8th chapter, Krishna says that they don't have to worry. They don't worry about the particulars of how they have to transition from this body or when or where. Others who are more in the mechanical path of trying to control the senses and mind through their own power have to kind of control those types of circumstances, but the devotee doesn't. The last verse of the 8th chapter says that through bhakti, one attains all the results one would get from performing sacrifices and studying the Vedas and being charitable and so forth. And at the end, you go to Krishna. That there's no other process that provides something independent and better that bhakti cannot touch. Bhakti contains all of that. And then the 9th chapter, Krishna starts it off by saying, again, that it's your non-enviousness, it's your sincerity that has qualified you to hear this most confidential knowledge. And he says, the 2nd verse, that this is susukham. It's most joyful, is joyfully performed. Bhakti yoga is joyfully performed. Then, of course, 4 and 5 and 6, I'm simultaneously one with and different from everything. I'm supporting everything. I'm in there, but I'm also not there. I'm maintaining my own personhood. And then a little bit about how he's the source of the destination of everything and the maintainer of everything. And how he's the origin of nature. That he's the adhyaksha, mayatyaksha prakriti, that he's the overseer and the administrator of material nature. It's not operating blindly. And the last part we left off was verses 13 and 14, where Krishna mentions that the great souls take shelter of him in bhakti, and that in verse 14, satitang kirtayanto mam. They're always chanting. This is a qualification of devotees, that they use their mouths. They actually use their voice. They use their ears. They put their attention that way. It's a really authorized, really proven and practical method of connecting. Satitam, constantly, which came up earlier in the Bhagavad Gita. And as I did then, when it came up earlier, I mentioned that this constantly can mean literally constantly. We're capable of that. And when we're going towards that, constantly thinking of, constantly glorifying, constantly hearing and chanting, at least daily, at least having a daily practice is also satatam, is also a constant. So that's where we left off. Everyone good to pick up in verse 15? So you're asking which verse is it that states that bhakti is joyfully performed? That's 9.2. 9.2. I can read it if you like.
Thank you. I just couldn't remember which verse it was.
Yeah. Raj vidya raj guhyam pavitram idam uttamam pratyakshavangamam dharmyam sukham kartamavyayam. He's describing this. It's the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It's a perfection of religion. It's actually personally and practically realized. It's directly experienced and is joyfully performed, very joyfully, in fact. Susukha means really, very much happy. Okay. So we're on verse 15. So Krishna said now, the great souls are devotees. They actually practice devotion. And they bow down to me, they perpetually worship me, they chant. Now in verse 15, he talks about how others conceive him, how others connect to him. Verse 15, he says, and I'll share the screen. Screen share is disabled. Can you enable that?
Sorry, yes, I accidentally, let me just make you a co-host. There you are.
Great. So verse 15. Jnana yagnena chapyanya yajantu mam upasate ekatvena pratatvena bahuta vishvatomukam. So after explaining that he's the source of everything and the supreme person, he says, however, others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many, and in the universal form. What does this mean? So there's a few different aspects of different ways that people worship or conceive of a supreme. One without a second. So there's a conception that everything is one, that we're all kind of God. I'm God, you're God. And that's the supreme. That's a kind of approach to the divine. And another one, he says here, diverse in many. So there are persons who are like polytheists, who consider that there are many deities, there are many gods, they're all the source of everything. And there are some practitioners like in Indian spirituality who will have worship different demigods and they put them all on the same level. That's kind of like that. Or worshippers of different spirits of nature, this and that, and putting them all kind of like on the same plane. That's one among many. And the last thing he said in this verse is in the universal form. So some people just worship the universe, right? And this is very popular these days. So we'll say like, the universe provides, or the universe this, the universe that. You've all heard that, I think. So there's a recognition of higher power in that sense. So Krishna is saying these are all conceptions of higher power. The universe is the supreme. All these different persons and demigods and empowered persons and spirits are the supreme. Or we're all one and everything is the supreme. But, he says, but it is I. Verse 16. Aham kratud aham yagya svadham aham aushatam. Mantroham aham evajam aham agnir aham hutam. It is I who am the ritual. I am the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. In previous ages, the practice of sacrifice for the age was elaborate sacrifice using fire and offering clarified butter into the fire. He's saying, I'm all these instruments of offering. I, this person, Krishna, I'm behind all of these things. I'm actually the source of all these. In other words, I'm also, I'm beyond this worship of the universe, of multiplicity and different persons, or that we're all one. Verse 17, I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajurvedas. So we see here, interesting point, that the father and the mother, that there's the feminine and the masculine. They're both there. Krishna is always with his energy. His spiritual energy is always with him. That's Radha. In the Maha Mantra, that's as Hare. Hare is the feminine spiritual energy. And those are always together. We're not just approaching a masculine source. The source of everything contains both masculine and feminine, as it has to. That's why we see those qualities in even the material. 18, I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place and the eternal seed. I give heat and withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and I'm also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. And then in verses 20 and 21, he talks a little bit about those who, as has come up earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, try to just be comfortable in this world. Those whose goal of spiritual practice is not to go to a supreme person or to do service exactly, though they may do some service, but that service is instrumental for them to just enjoy more. So in the spiritual texts of India, there are instructions for how to be pious, how to be charitable, honorable, truthful, and have good karma, really, and collect that good karma like chips in a casino, and then cash those chips for some credit, for some experience of the buffet, or this or that, and that can play out like, I want a longer life, I want to have more strength, I want to have more beauty, I want to enjoy my senses more, I want to have better facility for living, I want to hear beautiful things, I want to see beautiful things, I want to be beautiful, I want to be smart, I want to be rich. So you can have some of these things temporarily in the world with good karma. So Krishna is referencing that path, which is not what he advises in Bhagavad Gita, but he references it here. He says, text 20, Traividyamang somapav puta papa yajnairishtva svargatim pratayante te purnyamasajya surendra lokam ashnanti devyan vivideva bhogan. Those who study the Vedas and drink the soma juice, the juice of immortality, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, i.e., getting good karma, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. Sounds pretty good, right? Next verse. Titam bhuktva svargalokam vishalam kshine pornye martirokam vishanti evam tri dharma manuprapanna gatagatam kama kama labhante. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So some people conceive of the Supreme as the source of their benedictions. Their whole goal in life is just to be comfortable, and they'll do it in a pious way. We heard earlier in the 7th chapter how Krishna said, some people approach the Supreme because they want money, or they're suffering and they want like freedom from that suffering. And so that's considered pious. So somebody can perform pious activities to accumulate good karma. And that's a path. But he's saying, you got to come back. It's like having frequent flyer miles. If you have the best frequent flyer miles, you could be in first class. They might even roll out a red carpet for you. Might have a special lounge in the airport. You might have a different, quality of service, different meal, but that doesn't change everything about your existence. You still have to get off the plane. You still have to get on the plane, and those frequent flyers run out at some point. Those miles run out, and then it's back to coach for you, right? So the path of karma, paying now so you can enjoy later, it's not advised. And Krishna is saying, I'm manifesting that option. That's also coming from me. I am the source of all this. So why not go to me, in other words? Why not come to the Supreme? And then so in 22, he says after these, some people worship like this. Then he says, however, ananyas chintayanto mang yejanaf paripasate tesham nityap yuktanam yoga kshemam vahamyam. Very important verse, 9:22. He says, however, those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them, I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. So that the other category, they're not doing that. They're in it for themselves, and they may approach the Supreme, but just to get some good credits, so they can cash their chips in and go back to the buffet table of life. But Krishna is saying, those who aren't playing that game, those who are dedicated to me exclusively, I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. This exclusive devotion means that Krishna becomes like a devotee of his devotee. He protects one. We mentioned earlier how the path of bhakti is like being a child and having your parent hold your hand. You no longer operate under your own strength. That the function of surrender and bhakti is that you're saying, I'm coming to you, please help me. And I'm yours. I'm actually yours. And Krishna, he meets us in that. He meets us and he supports us. He says here, I preserve whatever they have and I carry what they lack. So that there's this progressive path, and Krishna is supporting us in that. So many devotees, I think I would say all devotees, have this experience of practicing, when they're practicing their bhakti in their lives, they have these experiences over and over again in different ways of Krishna looking out for them, Krishna giving them intelligence, putting them in touch with the right people, putting them in the right place at the right time, helping them learn from like critical mistakes or avoid mistakes, helping them have amazing experiences that renew their conviction. He carries what we lack, he makes up for our shortcomings and preserves what we have, right? Like for me, anybody who knew me growing up knew that I was really into reading. And so it's not a coincidence that my main service has been reading and studying and learning and sharing. It's like, that's what I've had. And Krishna has engaged that in his service and made it an uplifting thing for myself and for everyone who comes and, connects to that. And I may have so many faults. We all have faults, but he carries us in our lack, it makes up for that. And I could talk about those faults that I have. So, but we all have those experiences. So this is what that is talking about. It's a very sweet verse, very intimate verse. We have a hand.
Yes. Well, my hand came a little bit farther back, but also we just love this verse. This is one of Melanie's favorite verses. We got a lot of we got a lot of that happening in the Bhakti house tonight. But going back a little farther, if that's okay, where you were speaking about like 9:16 through 20:21-ish.
Yes.
Just so that, because I don't know what everybody knows necessarily in the room. You were talking about kind of like impersonalist versus personalist views on God, right? Impersonalist being that it's all one, and we want to like merge back into the oneness and become like reunite with God. Whereas personalist is like, there's me, my individual, and there's God, and then I want to serve God. And I'm wondering if you could just speak to the group a little bit about like why, or give a little evidence to, or back it up, like why we believe that in order to achieve like an experience divine love, there needs to be a relationship and a personal relationship versus the impersonalist approach.
Sure. Well, the idea of oneness without differentiation or distinction is like a partial understanding of the scripture, because there are a lot of verses that say that things are one. Krishna just said, I'm pervading everything, right? I'm the source of everything and everyone. But he also says that I'm not. So without reconciling that, it remains incomplete. So it's philosophically not sound, but practically we can see, it's like, would you rather taste the sweet or would you rather be the sweet? You can't enjoy the taste of sweetness if you are that. There has to be two for a relationship. That's why Krishna has manifested so many. One of the verses in the Upanishads, Eko Bahusyam, that from the one come many. That's for the purpose of relationship. That's why there is diversity. Variety is the spice of life, as they say. Variety is the spice of life means we don't want to just have the same thing in every meal. We don't want to just have it the same way, right? We don't want every day to look the same. We don't want things to be scripted. We want to have people who are unpredictable and different kinds of people, And that's the way it's always been in the world, and that's the way it's always going to be. And spiritually speaking, that's also true. Spiritual perfection isn't everyone losing their individuality and becoming rote and like a clone of each other. Quite the opposite. They actually have personhood, and it's beautiful. It's actually, like it's not possible. You see, if we're exactly the same as the Supreme in every way, I mean, that's logically inconsistent. Why would we be here needing to have a practice to reconnect to that and remember what we've forgotten? But if we were completely one, we couldn't have a relationship. And if we were completely different than the Supreme, we also couldn't have a relationship. They're like this big, different other, and maybe we can be afraid of them, but we can't connect to them. But the statements of Bhagavad Gita are very clear that we are the same nature, we're the same quality. We're not the same quantity. I'm not the source of infinite universes. I'm not the source of the material and spiritual energy personally. That's not true of me. But I happen to be, like Prabhupada would give the example, like a drop of water from the ocean contains all the qualities of the ocean. It's not the ocean totally, it's not quantitatively the ocean, but it's got some salt in it. It's got some oceanic qualities. And so we're little drops and we belong with that ocean, but every drop in this spiritual ocean has its own quality and interacts uniquely with the Supreme, because that's what gives, in Sanskrit, what's called rasa. That's where the flavor comes, you know? If everyone was like me, then who would lead kirtans like Kelly? And who would cook the meals like Srinivas? And who would do this and who would do that in their unique ways? It's just, it would be boring, stale. What a dry existence that would be. So Krishna has not manifested it like that. We're not all one. We're on the same spiritual platform, and we also have variety. Does that kind of like touch on what you're?
Yes.
Yes, and there's an infinite spiritual, like actual references from scripture to back what I'm saying up. Two of them earlier in this chapter, how Krishna is one with and different from everything.
Thank you. I hope
You're
that was
welcome.
helpful for everyone else too, because it's such an important piece, such an important piece of bhakti. Thank you.
Right. So Krishna is talking about exclusive devotion and how if it's there, then he carries what the devotee lacks and preserves what they have. And he goes on. I'm the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. He said this at the end of the 5th chapter. He said, if you know that, then you achieve peace. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. In verse 25, he gives a very permissive kind of idea that you get kind of what you want in life. 9:25, he says here, Yanti devavrata devan pitrun yanti pitrivrata bhutan yanti bhutejya yanti madhyajino pimam. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. Just like we heard about how the cultivation of consciousness determines where we go, what we care about, where we put our heart. You know, if we worship our boss, if we worship the world, and we come back to that. We worship money, we worship honey, we worship whatever. Then we got to come back as, I don't know, a bumblebee or something, right? Like there's always, we have that freedom. And if you want me, he says, you can have me. How can you have me? The next verse kind of answers that. And it's a very, very sweet verse. It's one of the sweetest verses in Bhagavad Gita, in my opinion. So simple, so profound. Patram is 9:26. Patram pushpam palang toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti bharatam ashnami prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Right? Think about this. You know, Krishna has gone on for so many chapters talking about karma, the universe, how he's in charge, he's the source of everything, material energies, the spiritual energies, controlling the uncontrolled mind, transcendental knowledge, you're not your body. And now he's saying, if you want me, you can have me. If you offer me even something simple, a drop of water, a leaf, a flower, fruit, I will, if it's offered with devotion, I will accept it. I will accept it. This is a very, very sweet thing. It's an open invitation. Everyone's open to share that. They're open to experience that for themselves. The Bhagavad Gita is a practical handbook. He's not saying, listen, just trust, and I'm not going to give you any way of figuring it out, like experiencing it for yourself. He just said at the beginning of the 9th chapter, it's pratyaksha, it's actually experienced directly. Bhakti is experienced directly. So here's a way to experience it. take that cup of water. This is empty now. Take that cup of water before you drink it, set it aside and offer it to Krishna. Krishna, this is your water. You're the taste of it. You manifested. I didn't make this. I didn't get the hydrogen and oxygen molecules. Even if I did, I wouldn't know what to do with them. But you made it happen. It's all yours. But here I am. I'm choosing to offer it back to you because I think you're great. Please accept it. And that's just off the cuff. Just some sincere feeling of it. You could try that. And Krishna's saying, if you do that, I will accept it. It's an open invitation. And this is a fundamental practice of bhakti, is to offer. In fact, one of our acharyas, one of our spiritual teachers, Rupa Goswami, one of the main students of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 500 years ago, he wrote several books, including the Nectar of Instruction, Nectar of Devotion. He said that one of the principles of bhakti is whatever the most beautiful things you have are, offer them to Krishna. You have if you just got a new car, offer that to Krishna. Don't just try to keep it for yourself. Offer it first. Offer the clothes. Offer, your renovated kitchen space. It works. It's actually practical. And so at least offer your food is very practical because we have to eat. And we like to, really. It's one of the main things we do. So much of the world is dedicated to growing food, cooking it, or buying it, cooking it, eating it, talking about it, all these things. At least before you eat it, offer it. So there's an invitation here. And he says, if it's offered with love and devotion, I will accept it.
We have a question here.
Yes, go ahead.
Come on down.
More of an observation, but something that's been really present for me a lot, and we've probably talked about it offline, is like ways to spiritualize your life.
Mm.
I've often thought about it in the context of offering at the altar, like flowers and water and things like this. But this feels like another way to just try to bring it into your everyday. That something as small as taking a drink of water can be an offering. So it's not really a question. It's more just another way that I'm trying to figure out how to make my daily life feel more present with Krishna.
Right.
Brilliant observation. Yes, it's a highly authorized way to spiritualize your life. And then under guidance you can find the time and amount and quality and quantity of that offering and work that into your experience. Okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to offer my water, for example. My spiritual teacher, he read the Bhagavad Gita when he was 16 years old. He was in high school and he was really looking for some spiritual truth. And he read this verse and he was walking to school the next day, 16-year-old boy. And he had an apple and his mom had packed for him and he looked at it and he thought, oh, all right. And he offered it to Krishna and he felt it. Reciprocation that this is real. This is actually a valid experience. And I've also experienced that from way early in my bhakti, practice when I was really new and coming to a bhakti center, learning how to offer food. I went to vegan cooking classes and learned. I was already vegetarian and learned how to cook different things. And real simple offering, just chanted Hare Krishna 3 times in devotion to God, however we understood the divine, however we understood it. And I've also been a pujari offering elaborate, highly ritualized worship on the altar. And in my experience, it's the devotion. It's the devotion that really makes it click, that really attracts Krishna's interest. And all the other stuff, cleanliness, punctuality, the ritual, the mantra, Sanskrit, this and that, all that is just a way to help us take it seriously and show up with our full heart. And you can do that right now, today, in English, wherever you are, with your apple. And thank you for that observation. You're muted.
Yeah, I wanted to be, but I'll say it now. Right. It's just that getting into the practice that whenever I buy something new or like go to TJ Maxx and get chips and like, show me a new shirt or, something for myself, it's like bring it to the altar and offer it. It's like, so you can do it with everything you do. And I just was thinking, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Shami, of like, Erin's asked a lot about spiritualizing work, right? And how to bring more of a spiritual lens. What do you think about even like before you send a difficult email, offering the, it's in a different way, but offering like the outcome of the response or whatever it may be, of like how you can offer these actions you take even in your work life, right, to Krishna, which is different when you're offering your food at your altar, these different things, but it's still a practice.
Well, the very next verse talks about just kind of that. He says, Yet karoshi yadashnasi yet jehoshi dadasi yet tapasyasi kante yet kurushvamanarpanam. 927. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that as an offering to me. So maybe you have like, a difficult email to write and it's an austerity. It's like challenging and you have to do it. And it's like, okay, I'm not just going to do this for a paycheck. I'm not just going to do it because my boss told me. I'm going to offer it. I'm being purified by this experience. Somehow or other, I have to write this awkward email and it's an austerity, and I'll do that as an offering to you, Krishna. That's completely bona fide. There's a essence of devotion in that. It's an essence of devotion in that.
Shamya Prabhu, can you, because I love, Erin, I am like right on your wavelength with this, that like, I think Shamya, you mentioned it a couple classes ago, and it's been like seared into my brain, like some of these like sensory experiences and to offer them. And it's just been so transformational for me. This concept of offering other things or offering outcomes, can you expand on like kind of just even things that we would say, or what's the, I get that the mood is to offer to Krishna to say, hey, this is not in my hands, it's in yours, and help me, please help this be in your service. But I guess I'm just trying to conceptualize, how do I offer the non-tangible, and what is that mood? What is that, what are the words maybe that some examples of words you would use to do that?
Yeah. Well, one thing I can say is like, like let's say I'm going to work and there's so many things I have to do at work. And before I go to work, I have my spiritual, like I'll have a morning practice, something. And so I'll get into work and I'll deliberately remember, like one word is remembrance. Like I'll deliberately remember and connect that I am doing this ultimately for you, whatever comes of it, the results of it, they're meant for you. They're meant to support my coming closer to you, to support others coming closer to you. And this is part of my experience right now. It's part of this. It's part of the duties you've given me at this time, and I'll do it nicely in that light. So remembrance is part of it, like deliberately going out of our way to remember and reconnect in our apparently like the abstract actions of our lives. They don't become abstract, they become concrete and connected. Arjuna actually goes to war for Krishna. That's pretty intense. But yeah, we raise our children for Krishna. We pay the bills. We keep a clean house. I mentioned that earlier. Like the idea, like if I conceive of the house, it's not my house, it's Krishna's house. Then when I'm cleaning the floor, I'm not just cleaning because I don't like clean floors. I'm cleaning because I want it to be pleasing for Krishna, right? I want it to be first class because Krishna's first class. I want him to have the best. Like when you love somebody, you want them to have the best of something. You don't really want to like bring him into a dirty place, right? So even if I don't have full-fledged love for Krishna, I can practice that by when I clean the floor, being like, yeah, this isn't just for me. It's actually like, it's for you, Krishna. And when one gets deeper in that, then the real feelings start to develop. Like, it's not unusual, for example, that like they say, people who like to eat make really good cooks, right? Because they know how important it is to have good food. And they go out of their way to get really good at cooking. And so it's often the case that what people are really good at and they like to do for themselves are the things that they can start to do really well for Krishna. You know, I know how amazing and mind-blowing Bhagavad Gita is, and expanding for my consciousness. That's why I want to teach it. I want people to be able to experience that and come closer to Krishna like that, you know? So it's like offering means also finding what is it in this experience that resonates with me, and how can I use that to expand my devotion? Like, what do I have to get? What am I supposed to learn from this, Krishna? This work experience, this email, this family experience, this financial thing, this health thing I'm going through. What am I supposed to learn? How am I supposed to grow from this? What do you want? What is it you want me to, how do you want me to develop, right? And how do you want me to take something from this and share it with others? That was just kind of like, I don't know if that was a very cogent answer, but does that give you some stuff to work with?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Anything more before we continue? I think we can get to the end of this chapter. Exciting. Okay, whatever you do, whatever you eat, offer or give away, whatever austerities perform, do it as an offering to me. Okay, he says then, in this way, you'll be freed. You'll be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. And you're freed from the connection to good and bad karma. With your mind fixed on me and this principle of renunciation, you'll be liberated and come to me. This principle of renunciation is, it's not, the results aren't for me, they're for Krishna, right? Just like I said earlier in the 3rd and 5th chapters, you do your duty, you don't not do it, but you're not entitled to the fruits of the activities, you're not entitled to the results for yourself. Now, text 29, he says, Samoham sarva bhuteshu, I'm equal to everyone. I'm not partial to anyone. Namidveshu astina priyaha, nobody's my enemy, no one's my friend. Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. But if somebody renders service to me with devotion, I'm in them, and they're in me. I become their friend, they become mine. This is equality. Krishna doesn't play favorites. It's he doesn't give himself away. He's not like you know, like you'll find people have favorites, you know, and like if you're a fan of such and such sport team, they can make all kinds of bad decisions and you'll still justify why you like them. Krishna, he doesn't play favorites. Everyone has the opportunity to come closer to him. And if somebody chooses to, then he reciprocates with them gladly. And then he talks about his mentality in dealing with his aspiring devotees. Verse 30, he says, Apichet suduracharo bhajite mam ananyapak sadhut eva samantavya samyak vyavasito hisaha. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if they're engaged in devotional service, the Sanskrit is ananyapak, they're without deviation. If they're engaged in undeviating devotional service, they're to be considered saintly because they're properly situated in their determination. Next verse says, they quickly become righteous and attain lasting peace. O Arjuna, declare boldly that my devotee never perishes. The idea is that we're works in progress and we can make mistakes. We can make mistakes. Even the word he uses is sudurachara, like really abominable. We can make pretty bad choices. But if our sincerity is there to be practicing bhakti and to try to rectify ourselves for him, that we're trying to move forward, then he considers us saintly because of the virtue of our determination that we'll get there. He actually is very, very kind that way. It doesn't mean that there won't necessarily have to be some consequences to our actions. There are always consequences, personal consequences, maybe even legal consequences, but that from Krishna's point of view, if we're dedicated to him, he's dedicated to us. He doesn't give up on us. You know, just like a parent doesn't give up on their child. There's no point at which it's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, you made too many bad decisions. I don't love you or care about you anymore. That doesn't happen, right? The ideal parent, the perfect father, mother, there may be consequences for your choices, sure. But I'm always ready for you to make a better choice. I'm always waiting for that. I'm always supporting you in that. But Krishna's like that. 3 verses left. Okay, verse 32. O Arjuna, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, including women, if they're Vaishyas, merchants, if they're Shudras, laborers, anyone can attain the supreme destination. Everyone, no matter what their walk of life, or if they have, if they come from an impious or lower background, he says, doesn't matter. Everyone can come to me. He says, how much more this is so of the righteous brahmanas, the saintly persons, and the devotees. Therefore, engage in loving service to me. He summarizes everything in the last verse. Share this. This is a verse that actually is repeated in Bhagavad Gita.
Pause you before you go to the last verse. Just this is a verse that, verse 32 can often be a one that can be quote unquote triggering for some people, depending on which kind of body they're in a female body, male body, like this. Will you just explain the context of Prabhupada giving this purport and saying, though they may be lower of birth, women being the first one?
Yeah. So the Sanskrit is Mahipardhavipashute ye pisu papayonayaha. And then he lists, so papayonaya means like of lower birth. And then he lists different kinds of persons. They're not necessarily lower birth. Laborers, merchants, women, they're not lower necessarily. This papayoni, it's not clear in the Sanskrit whether Krishna is saying that like persons who are of the category, like they're into arts and crafts, they're a laborer, they're a craftsperson, they're sinful. That's not what he's saying. It's just that it's an inclusive statement. Actually, there's no person who is excluded from practice of devotion, right? Our acharyas have commented on this verse. It's clear from the Sanskrit that Krishna is not putting women or merchants or any of these other specific categories into the category of born in of a lower family. He's saying whether you're born of a lower family, or you're a woman, or you're a merchant, or you're a laborer, or, he says in the next verse, you're a brahmana, a teacher, a wise person, or you're an organizer of people, a leader, doesn't matter. You can come to me. It's he's highlighting the transcendental factor of bhakti, that it goes beyond, it cuts beyond our social divisions, our physical differences, our mental differences, family, language, time, place, circumstance, age. It's beyond that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
In the last verse, verse 34, I'll share it. This is a verse that's actually repeated in Bhagavad Gita. This verse is 3/4 of it is repeated in the 18th chapter, right at the very end of the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana pavamad bhakto madhyaji mang namaskuru mam e vaishasi utvaivam atmanam matparayanaha. Engage your mind. He gives 4 things here that we can do. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Thinking of me, being my devotee, worshiping me, paying obeisances. Really practical. Using your mind, using your body, your heart, and worshiping. Yeah.
Will you explain what paying obeisances means beyond even just the literal?
Yeah. I mean, to pay obeisances means, like, for example, you'll see in Vaishnava culture and Bhakti culture, when people greet each other, they'll like fold the hands. Like, this is a kind of like, I'm honoring you, I'm lowering myself. Sometimes if it's a very exalted person, you may bow down. So this is literally paying obeisances. So with the body, one lowers oneself. The Muslims do this too in their prayers. It's actually really hard to be proud when your head is on the floor. It's a very practical thing. If you put your heart higher than your head, you put your head down, it really breeds humility, really breeds like simplicity of heart. So that's an authorized process of bhakti, actually, to literally bow down to God. Folding your hands and in your heart also bowing down is also namaskara, obeisances. Namaskara literally means to give respect, to give to give respect, or to like recognize that it's not about me, it's about you. I'm honoring you. That's the way you can break down namaskara. Kara means to do, like in the word karma. Namas is like namaha, not me. It's not me. I'm deliberately saying it's not about me in this moment. So the body is supportive of that. And so, and if you can't pay obeisances with your body, it's actually a matter of the heart. If you can just like bow down in your heart that, yeah, I surrender. It's not about me. It's about you. That's obeisances. Those are some thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's the chapter. Krishna ends it like that. If you can do these things, he says, sure, you'll be absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Hare Krishna. All right. Wow, we made it through chapter 9, my favorite chapter, Bhagavad Gita. Any highlights, anything that stood out? Let's take a couple highlights before we end. Questions are fine too, reflections. Anything you heard?
I was just going to mention to Kelly's question earlier, because I love that idea of like that reciprocal love of Krishna in Prabhupada's purport, and I just had it marked. It's a beautiful kind of, I guess, analogy with the ring and the diamond, and how the diamond in the ring, you know, makes that ring even more beautiful. And it's kind of like that relationship between us and Krishna when we put Krishna as part of that piece of our life, that it beautifies it and complements it. And then see if I can find it, but it was just like a really
it's in purport 29. I just looked it up.
Yeah, and there's like just the one line that really stood out to me when reading the purport was that if a reciprocal relationship is not present between the devotee and the Lord, then there's no personalist philosophy. And it's basically saying like the Supreme Lord becomes the devotee of his devotees. I just think that's absolutely beautiful. I just like, I don't know that I ever really understood that concept until I saw that in the purport. And I just think that even again makes that idea of God's infinite love for us, like that makes it even more tangible when you think about like how, you know, when we bow down to him and we bring him into our life, like he is a devotee of the devotees. I just think that's a very cool reflection.
Thank you. Yeah, beautiful purport to verse 29. Right. Prabhupada says, whoever surrenders unto me, proportionally I take care of him. This transcendental reciprocation exists because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. When a diamond is set in a golden ring, it looks very nice. The gold is glorified, and at the same time, the diamond is glorified. The Lord and the living entity eternally glitter. And when a living entity becomes inclined to the service of the Supreme Lord, he looks like gold. The Lord is a diamond, and so this combination is very nice. Living entities in the pure state are called devotees. The Supreme Lord becomes the devotee of his devotees. Wonderful.
Love that.
Anything else stood out? Reflections, comments? Anything you heard?
I really appreciate what you said right after we were talking about Krishna becomes a devotee of his devotee, that the function of surrender is I'm coming to you, I'm yours. And then Krishna meets us and protects us. Right. In chapter 9, verse 22, and then within that protection, he makes up for our shortcomings and engages us in our gifts. Like he carries what we have. Right. And so he helps us figure out how to engage, you know, the gifts that we have in service in the world.
Yes. Those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. Yeah. This is like evidence for why it's a really good idea to start your day with some direct practices of bhakti, like chanting and hearing, because we may have so many things we have to do that will require our intelligence and our money and time and energy and our so many senses in mind. But it's like, if you start by dedicating yourself to Krishna, you get him on your side, you get support. He carries what you lack, he preserves what you have. The experience of that is the experience devotees have when they start their day with some japa, some practice of chanting Hare Krishna attentively and dedicating themselves to that, even for a few minutes. They get empowered, they feel support, they feel carried. They'll receive guidance, they'll receive support throughout their day. That time that you put to Krishna comes back. You get it back from him in the form of so many things.
Yeah, and the beauty of that, right, is that like Krishna loves everyone the same amount, right? That's also really came through in, I think, this chapter, whether you're chanting the Mahamantra or, you know, have a different practice or don't have a spiritual practice, he loves all of us equally. Like, we don't have to do something to be worthy of that. However, he gives us the ability to realize that there's a place we can take shelter and that we're not doing it. We're not alone.
Yes.
Right.
And he makes it an option. He presents the option. Krishna's mood in Bhagavad Gita is never like, you have to do this. You're forced to do it. You know, that it's like, if one offers me a leaf of flower, fruit, or water with devotion, I will accept it. It's like, you don't have to do it, but it's a great idea. And so he's making it known how he'll open himself up. He's offering the opportunity. And yeah. Any other reflections? Anything that you heard?
We have two in the room here. We have two.
Great.
Melanie.
Go ahead.
I loved your clarification of 932, just talking about like that Kelly asked you to talk about that piece about like lower birth women, all of
Mhm.
that, because I've definitely read that a lot of times and thought a lot about like how I was brought into this life and the life I was given right from the very beginning and who I am. And it just is really wonderful to hear that. And what you said was putting all differences aside, it's beyond all of that.
Mm.
And it just that nobody it just means that it isn't he isn't putting anyone lower than anyone else. It just doesn't matter. Putting all differences aside is beyond all of that. That's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
He's
I
not
really-
putting any conditions on practice of
Yeah.
bhakti and approaching him.
Mm.
Yes, thank you.
Beautiful. Amy?
Sure. I like your comment about we are works in progress and we can make mistakes. I think a lot of us strive for perfection in this world, and there's just, it's not, you know, it's it's me too.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Definitely.
We're meant to make mistakes. That's what we learn.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
Krishna speaks a lot about his attitude to that, his patience, his tolerance.
Yeah, and like our mistakes are our faults. And he says, I'll carry your faults.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Notably, like,
And then we
you'll
would be
find- you'll find like very advanced devotees, they won't use that verse to justify their own misdeeds. They won't like do something wrong, like, yeah, but, you know, it's okay because Krishna said. They may use it to be merciful to others who are making mistakes. They may like try to keep them in the game, keep them encouraged, and forgive them. But they'll also take the responsibility for their own actions. But there's a way in which, you know, yeah, as you're saying, like, we're not perfect, and our goal isn't to be perfect. That's not the goal of bhakti. It's not to be perfect. It's to be a good devotee. It's to give your heart to Krishna, and including and through any faults and any mistakes. Beautiful. I think that's good. 7:45. What do you think? Any other? Would anyone else like to contribute anything before we call it a night? All right.
So much for your class and your service and your wisdom and your humor.
Thank you all for your attentive ears. Hare Krishna. So for this week, you can read the rest of the 9th chapter. That was text 15 through the end, through text 34, Bhagavad Gita. And If you could reply in the next couple of days on the WhatsApp thread. If everyone could just reply with one reflection, anything that you heard, that would be terrific, and it'll keep the juice flowing for us as we churn through the 9th chapter Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare,
Hare Bol.
Hare Bol.
Let's make a
See you
few
next week.
announcements before everyone leaves. Shamya Pras will be in Vermont for the next class and maybe the last one too. So come in person if you'd like to. It's really, and if you're in, imagine you're in person if you're in New Jersey or wherever you are, or other parts of Vermont. And then it's pretty obvious that we're not going to finish the Bhagavad Gita in this 12-week course. We'll probably get to chapter 11, maybe 10, right? Maybe another chapter 2. So we definitely want to offer another cohort, if you will. But probably in another 12 weeks we can finish it, and if we do, we can have more space for questions and exploration within that. And we'll let you know on when that will start and all that information. But just so that we're not going to just like stop at the middle of the Bhagavad Gita. So just for awareness. That.
Yeah,
This was our
11th.
oh, so we only have one more.
Is it?
I
Is
thought
there
we had
11
2
total?
more. There was 12 total.
I have next week as last one.
Okay, so next week is the last one. Okay, so then definitely come in person. If you
Well,
can.
I mean, I can always just have another one after that, because the plan is that Kelly and I are going to India on the 25th. Krishna willing, just trying to sort out some passport things on my end, but and then we would continue it when we come back. So, but anyway, because what I'm hearing from so many people is that they want to go through the whole Bhagavad Gita, but also didn't want to just like skim through it super fast just for the sake of having like finished it. So I think the pace we've been going at is pretty good. I like giving people the opportunity to ask questions and like dive into the experience of what Krishna is talking about and the practicality and application. And if anyone has any requests around any of that, definitely let us know. But we want to have another container for the Bhagavad Gita, and we'll make it open, and we'll talk more about that, the next class and on WhatsApp and stuff.
Thank you. I just wanted to plant that seed to have that little Bhagavad Gita creeper start to really grow in everyone's heart. Okay. Hari Bol, Hari Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Good night, everybody. Hare Bol. See you soon.